There is someone thinking about you right now, not casually, not in the way people think about what to eat later or whether they forgot to lock a door. They are thinking about you the way the tide thinks about the shoreline, constantly, endlessly returning again and again, even when nobody is there to witness it. And yet they are not here. They are not calling. They are not reaching out. They are keeping their distance. And what you may not realize, what very few people ever explain, is the one hidden reason why. Stay with me, because what you are about to hear could become one of the most important things you ever understand about love. There is a certain kind of silence that cuts deeper than any argument ever could. It is not the silence of indifference. It is not the silence of someone who has stopped caring. It is the silence of a person who cares so deeply, so completely, so overwhelmingly, that they no longer know what to do with everything they feel. You have felt this silence, haven't you? You have sat alone in a room and felt the absence of this person like a physical force, like gravity drawing you toward something unseen. You have checked your phone, not because you expected a message, but because some deeper part of you, some ancient instinct hidden beneath logic and reason, whispered that they were thinking about you too. And they were. They are. But they continue to stay away. And the reason, the hidden reason, lives not in their heart, but in their deepest wound. Carl Jung once wrote that everything that irritates us about others can lead us toward a greater understanding of ourselves. But perhaps there is something else hidden within that idea. Everything that pulls us away from the people we love most can also lead us into the darkest and least explored chambers of our inner world. The person who loves you deeply and remains distant is not doing so because love has faded. They are staying away because love has uncovered something inside them that they are frightened to confront. Something they carry not from today, but from long before you entered their life. Something that has very little to do with you, and yet explains why they struggle to move closer. Think about what it means to love someone so completely that their presence becomes a mirror. To love someone so much that when you look at them, you do not only see them, you see yourself. You see your disappointments. You see your fears. You see the child you once were, the child who learned that love often ends with someone leaving. You see a younger version of yourself standing before doors that closed too many times by too many people. When love becomes deep enough, it stops being merely a feeling. It becomes an excavation, and not everyone is ready to be excavated. Some people need more time in the darkness before they can endure the kind of light that genuine love brings. This is not an excuse. Please hear that clearly. This is not a reason to diminish your feelings or pretend that distance does not hurt. It hurts. It hurts in the way only the truest things can hurt. Not because they are wrong, but because they are profoundly right. The ache you feel is not evidence that love is broken. The ache you feel is evidence that love is real. And real love, the rare kind that does not appear every season of life, always asks something from us. The question is never whether love will require something. The question is whether you are willing to understand what it is asking of you, and whether the other person is willing to begin their own long journey toward understanding the same thing. Let me tell you something about the person who loves you and stays away. They wake in the morning, and their first thought is not about work. It is not about responsibilities. It is not about the endless machinery of daily life. Their first thought is you, a spark, a warmth, and then almost immediately a shadow. Because for them, joy and fear are not separate experiences. They are the same experience wearing different masks. Over years of loss, through people who entered their life and left wounds they never fully named, they learned something painful. They learned that wanting something completely means risking losing it completely. And losing you, even as an imagined possibility, is something they have already convinced themselves they could not survive. So they protect themselves by staying away, not because you do not matter, because you matter too much. There is a psychological phenomenon often described as the fear of engulfment. It is the fear of being absorbed, consumed, or overwhelmed by closeness. It appears most strongly not in people who cannot love, but in people who once loved with everything they had and were devastated by what followed. Their nervous system learned to associate intimacy with danger. Their body longs for warmth, yet their survival instincts tell them to retreat from the very thing they crave. So they move closer. then they pull away, not because they are playing games, not because they are manipulating you, not because they enjoy your confusion, but because a war is taking place inside them between two versions of themselves, the part that wants to love you, and the part still trying to survive what love once did to them. You have probably spent countless nights wondering what you did wrong, replaying conversations, re-examining moments, turning memories over and over like stones in a river, searching for the exact place where something changed. But you have been measuring yourself against a silence that was never truly about you. And that may be the cruelest part of all. Not that someone loves you and stays away, but that their distance can feel like a judgment of your worth, as though their inability to remain is proof that you are somehow inadequate, as though their retreat means you were too much, or not enough, or somehow impossible to love, and none of that is true. Not one part of it. These are not questions that come with simple answers. But here is what remains true. You cannot love someone into being ready. You cannot be so patient, so compassionate, so perfectly attuned in your affection that you heal a wound they have not yet chosen to face. Love is not a remedy you apply to another person's pain. Love is an invitation, and invitations can be accepted or refused. What you can do, what you must do, is remain truthful with yourself about what you need, what you are willing to give, and how long you can continue offering one without receiving the other. There comes a moment in every person's life when they are confronted with the most difficult choice of all. Not the choice between right and wrong, not the choice between security and risk, but the choice between the love that exists and the love that might someday exist. The love that is present yet distant, real yet restrained, felt yet never fully spoken, and the love that is still taking shape, still making its way toward you through time and circumstance. A love that has not arrived yet, but when it does, it will be ready, completely ready, unafraid. Not because that person never experienced fear, but because somewhere along the way they chose to face it rather than be ruled by it. You deserve that second kind of love. Yet it is also possible, if this person is willing, genuinely willing, that you are standing beside someone who could eventually grow into that. People heal. People evolve. People sometimes reach a point where the pain of avoiding the truth becomes greater than the fear of confronting it. And when that happens, they often discover that what they were running from was never the monster they imagined. It was their own longing. It was the deepest and most authentic need of their heart, disguised in the frightening costume of vulnerability. And the instant they stop running and turn toward it, the instant they recognize it for what it truly is, everything begins to change. But you cannot wait forever for the possibility of another person's transformation. That is not love. That is sacrifice. And sacrifice, when it becomes total and one-sided, eventually hollows a person from within. It leaves them empty in a way that even the eventual arrival of what they hoped for cannot entirely repair. Because you cannot spend years living in the posture of waiting without being changed by it. Without teaching your heart that love means waiting endlessly. That love means standing outside someone else's closed door, knocking softly, never quite knowing if anyone will answer. And the heart that learns that lesson carries it into every relationship that follows. Even the ones that would choose differently. Even the ones that would open the door completely if only you believed such openness was possible. So let me speak now to that version of you. The one who is exhausted. The one who has been generous with understanding, patient with silence, and charitable with every explanation. The one who has guided themselves through countless moments of doubt. Who has justified the distance. Who has carried both their own love and another person's fear with remarkable tenderness for far longer than anyone could reasonably expect. To that version of you, I want to say something that may feel unfamiliar, something that may even feel like a betrayal of the love you carry. Yet it may be one of the most loving things you hear today. You are allowed to set down the burden. You are allowed to stop holding both ends of a rope that only you are pulling. You are allowed to need what you need without shrinking those needs simply to make them easier for someone else to reject. Your desire for full, present, acknowledged, spoken, embodied love is not a demand. It is not unreasonable. It is not evidence that you are too needy, too sensitive, or too much. It is one of the most human desires that exists. The desire to be loved openly, in the daylight, with full awareness, full presence, and full willingness. You are allowed to want that, And wanting it clearly, without apology, may be the very thing that finally brings clarity to a situation that has remained in uncertainty for far too long. Because clarity, even when painful, is where healing begins. The moment you stop treating ambiguity as a substitute for love is the moment the situation must eventually resolve itself. Either the person who loves you from afar will feel the change in your energy. They will sense that the door they have been quietly keeping open with one foot is beginning to close, and they will finally make the choice their fear has delayed. Or they will not, and in not choosing they will have chosen. And then you will know. And you will grieve honestly, fully and completely, without uncertainty softening the edges of reality. And afterwards, slowly, you will begin to live again. Grief is not the end of love. This is one of the most important truths a person can learn. We have been taught to think of grief as love's failure, as proof that something went wrong, as the price we pay for caring too deeply. But grief is simply love with nowhere left to go. It is the continued presence of love after its destination has moved beyond reach. And to grieve completely, to allow yourself to feel the weight of what was, what might have been, what you hoped for, and what never arrived, is not weakness. It is the deepest form of honoring what you felt. It is the acknowledgement that something real happened, that you were not imagining it, that the love was not an illusion, that the connection, however unfinished, however complicated, however much it was made of equal parts comfort and ache, was real. And now let me tell you something about where this story can go from here. Because this is not merely a story about someone who loves you from a distance. It is a story about what love does when it encounters its own limits. About the way pain, when faced honestly, becomes the instrument of our greatest growth. About how the wound at the center of this situation, yours, theirs, and the wound that exists between two people who care deeply for each other, yet cannot quite find their way together, is also the doorway, the place where the old story ends and a new story begins. Because you are changing through this, whether you realize it or not, whether it feels like transformation or simply feels like pain, which is often how transformation feels while it is happening. You are developing a depth that a more comfortable life could never have given you. You are learning the difference between love that asks nothing and love that asks everything. You are discovering which kind of love you truly desire. You are learning that you can survive another person's silence without losing your own voice. That you can hold compassion for another person's wounds without abandoning your own wholeness. These are not small achievements. These are qualities that define some of the most profound human beings who have ever lived. Jung believed that the unconscious is not merely a storage place for what has been repressed. He believed it is also a source, perhaps the source of genuine creativity, meaningful connection, and true transformation. The things buried there are not simply obstacles. They are unfinished stories that, when finally completed, become the foundation of who we are becoming. The person who loves you and remains distant is standing on the threshold of their own unfinished story. They possess all the materials. They possess the love. They possess the wound. They possess the capacity, even if they cannot yet reach it, to create something extraordinary from both. What they need is courage. The courage that arrives when someone chooses, one terrifying moment at a time, to stay. And here is what I want you to carry forward from this moment. Whatever happens, whether this person eventually finds their way to you completely or whether they remain where they are, loving and loved from a distance neither of you intended, you are not defined by whether they stay. You are not measured by the empty spaces others leave behind. You are not diminished by a love that could not quite find its voice. You are made more fully yourself by every love you have dared to feel, especially the ones that cost you something. Every person who has entered your life and left you changed, even painfully changed, has been part of a greater excavation, part of the process through which you become slowly, painfully, beautifully, the fullest version of the person you were always meant to be. There is someone thinking about you right now. They love you in a way their fear has not yet learned how to translate into presence. They carry you in the deepest and least accessible part of themselves. And whether that love ever finds its way into the open air of your shared life, or remains a quiet and private thing carried separately by both of you into whatever comes next, it was real. It is real. Love does not stop being love simply because it cannot find its form. It does not stop mattering because it cannot find its words. It continues shaping the people who carry it long after they part, long after silence stretches into months and then into years. And you who have loved someone who stays away, you who have carried your own heart with such extraordinary patience and such extraordinary pain, you are not broken. You are not too much. You are not abandoned. You are living through one of the deepest experiences a human being can have. The discovery that love is not a transaction, not a guarantee, and not a reward for deserving it. Love is grace. And grace, by its nature, cannot be earned, forced, or fully understood. It can only be received with open hands and trusted. Trusted completely, even when it arrives in forms you never expected and leaves through doors you never intended to open. The hidden reason they stay away will not remain hidden forever. Either they will finally speak it in a moment of courage that changes everything, or time and distance will speak it on their behalf in the quiet way only endings can. But you already know the most important thing. You know that you are capable of this, of feeling this deeply, of loving this honestly, of surviving the silence and still believing, somewhere beneath the hurt, that something worthy of you remains possible. That is not a small thing. It may be the rarest and most precious thing in the human world. Hold on to it. Carry it carefully. Do not allow anyone, not even the person you love most, not even the silence they leave behind, to convince you that it is not worth protecting. It is worth everything. You are worth everything. And the story of your life is still being written in ink that has not yet dried, in chapters that have not yet unfolded, moving toward an ending more beautiful than anything you can currently imagine. Keep moving forward. The love that can stay is still finding its way toward you.